James, Chapter 7. It was near a mile from the tea water pump back down to the island to the Lockton house, a long journey carrying heavy buckets that stretched my arms into sore ribbons. I forgot the pain when Curzon stopped and pointed and said, "There 'tis, the house. It was made of blocks of cream-colored stone and was wider from side to side than Jenny's tavern." I tilted my head up and counted 4 floors, each with big windows facing the street. There were balcony railings on the roof. There was even windows peeking out at foot level, cellar windows, which meant 5 stories in one house. A curtain moved. "Make haste," Curzon said, "and if you value your life, don't use the front door." The sun caught the ring in his ear and blazed as he tipped his hat to me. I hurried through the side gate. The mansion was twice as long as it was wide. A large plot stretched behind it, with a cistern, a privy, a poor excuse for a garden, at the far end a carriage house and a small stable. "You there!" I turned around. A tiny woman wearing a green calico skirt and a brown net bodice and a dingy shift stood in the open door next to the kitchen. She tossed a pan of dirty water out onto the flagstone and pushed a strand of graying hair out of her eyes with the back of her hand. "What's your business here?" she demanded. I'm Isabel. I'm the Master Lockton bought us from Newport." The anger drained out of her face. "You're the new girl gone for water? Lord help us, did you get lost?" "I don't think so. Curzon, funny little boy, ring in his ear?" She shook his head. "That's Bellingham's boy. You stay away from him. Bring in the water. We've got a world of work to do." Her name was Becky Barry, though it'll be mud if I don't pull this house together in a flash," she said as she poured the fresh water into a pot and swung it over the kitchen fire. She barely stopped talking long enough to draw a breath. 8 months! They vanished to Boston for 8 months, and they show up with no warning wanting tea. Tea! I could get tarred and feathered for brewing tea, she muttered. I turned around. Her face marked her as being one of middle years, dotted with freckles and pox scars. Her chin was narrow and pointed like a shovel, and her smile was missing several teeth. "The rule here is simple. Do what Madam says. You know where the tea water pump is. You'll go there every day. You'll go with me to the market when I need you to. Don't go north of Chambers Street or wandering off past Mulberry. Miss Madam writes you a pass. You don't want folks thinking you're trying to run. That don't work around here. You been a housemaid before?" I shook my head. "We lived on a farm. Pardon me, ma'am, Miss Becky, but can you tell me where my sister is?" "Your what?" Her eyebrows went up. "Oh, that little girl." I nodded. "Ruth. She's slow, ain't she?" I didn't dare explain until I figured out what kind of person Becky was. "She's good-natured." Becky walked into the pantry, crowded with shelves of crockery. "Not going to cause me any trouble?" "Never," I lied. "Where is she, please, ma'am?" Becky came out carrying a tarnished silver teapot and a stack of china cups and plates. "Madam Lockton told me to give the little one a bath and feed her." She went back to the pantry and shouted a little so I could hear her. "She's in the privy. Your sister, I mean, not the madam." I let out a breath and stepped towards the door. Becky came in carrying a small chest. "Where do you think you're going?" "To fetch Ruth." "Oh, no, you're not," Becky said. "Madam wants her outside peeling potatoes. You're to work in here." "But—" Through the window I watched Ruth leave the privy and walk straight to a bench. She hopped up on it, pulled a potato from the sack next to her, and started peeling with a small knife, her feet kicking the air under the bench. She looked like a little bird on a twig. I relaxed some, as she was safe and happy enough. Becky brushed at the cobwebs clinging to her skirt. "But nothing. If Madam sees you idling and jawing out there, there'll be a devil to pay." She paused. "And she can be harsh, a harsh mistress to slaves." I waited for her to say more, but she shook her head once and handed me the broom. "Me, I see things different." She picked up a pile of rags and a jar. "You do what you're told and we'll get along fine. Now, follow me and pay attention." Becky led me down a narrow corridor to the front entry hall, where a grand staircase curled upward. A tall grandfather clock sat on the foot of the stairs, pecking away at the hour as if a crow trapped inside were trying to break loose. The walnut-lined chest that Madame had fussed over at the dock was set open in front of the clock. Opposite the chest was the door that led to the street. Two other doors with tarnished brass poles faced the hall. Becky pointed to the door on the right. That there is the master's library. You don't need step foot on it without permission. He don't like his things touched. A library? With books? And maps and papers, all in a jumble. It's a wonder he can find anything. She opened the door on the left and entered, me at her heels. This is a good parlor, where we'll all serve tea. The drawing-room is upstairs. We'll clean up there later. Open them windows. The room was crowded with furniture, draped with cloth. The air was thick and stale. I pulled aside the heavy drapes and stretched on my toes to push up the window. The sills were dusty, and the corners were spun thick with spider webs, studded with dead flies. I went to open the next window as Becky laid out a rag on each sill. "Wipe down the windows and sweep the floor before you uncover the furniture," she said. The second window was stubborn. I pushed up as hard as I could, until it suddenly flew open and I nearly lost my balance. Becky grabbed me before I tumbled outside. "Easy on," she said as I regained my balance. "You're no good to me with a cracked head." Three soldiers wearing homespun shirts and carrying muskets walked past the window, laughing loudly. "I wish they'd all gone home," Becky muttered. "Soldiers is a nuisance." "You don't like the rebels?" I asked. Becky put a finger to her lips and pulled me away from the window. "Listen to me good. Them that feed us," she pointed upstairs, "they're loyalists, Tories. That means we're Tories too, understand?" "Yes, ma'am," I nodded. "But—" I hesitated, not sure if I was allowed to ask questions. "Master Lockton claimed he was a patriot on the docks." Becky fought to open the final window. A cool breeze flowed through the room and stirred the dust. "He was faking to protect his skin. Some folks switch back and forth. One day they're for the king, the next it's all liberty and freedom, huzzah! A tribe of Mr. Facing Both Ways. That's what you'll find in New York. But you know what never changes?" I shook my head. "No, what?" "Madam wants lemon cakes with her tea. She is terribly fond of cakes, is Madam. Lady Clarissa Seymour is coming to hear all of the news from Boston." "A lady? A royal lady?" Becky laughed. "Close enough. She's the master's aunt. She's rich and old and owns land in 3 countries. And the master hopes to inherit the lot when she dies, so they treat her like a queen herself, to her face at least." The grandfather clock in the hall bonged loudly 4 times, startling us both. "Wretched clock," Becky muttered. "I'm off to the baker. Finish sweeping in here, and dusting. After that, polish the teapot, and bring in the firewood. Don't stop moving, whatever you do."